Please call to order. Please stand and with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance, flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation. Justice for all. Thank you. Roll call. Yeah, Sue, tell them. I can't read it. Here. Yes.
Supervisor Frederick, there you go. Got it? Okay. Supervisor Beck and Supervisor Winky.
Here.
Here, press here.
Oh.
Supervisor Celebree, Supervisor Mauer, and Supervisor Decker are excused.
Also, we have with us Youth and Governance, Shelby Jantz. Oh, they left?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Next, we'll have citizens' comments, and I just want to read something before citizens step up there. If there's any citizens wishing to speak, everyone wishes to speak will have one opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. Commentators must provide their name and address for the record before making their comments. They're asked to refrain from using vulgar or profane language, also to avoid attacks, threats, or comments directed at individuals. And they're advised under the open meeting law, according to the Corporation Council, the board cannot respond directly to any comments made or asked not to request that we do so. Failure to follow these guidelines or engaging in behavior which is disorderly, abusive, or disruptive may result in being asked to leave the premises. Are there any citizens wishing to speak? Any citizens wishing to speak? Step up to the podium. Hearing none. Again, once more, any citizens wishing to speak? Public comments are closed. Thank you.
Supervisor reports.
Any supervisor reports? Oh. Go ahead.
Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm hoping this is the appropriate time to say this because I don't think there's anything else on the agenda where I could bring this up. It has to do with as we go forward with our budgeting. I know we've had a couple of committees already had their budgets, so it's a little bit late for them, but just wanted to bring up that you know the country is hurting with the economy, with a lot of people out of work. A lot of people have reduced income for a period of time. So I want us all to at least take that in consideration when we're looking at approving these budgets and making sure what we're approving is what's needed and not what's wanted. On April 8th of 2020, New York Times came out that 31% can't pay rent, and it's only going to get worse. Wall Street report on July 23rd, 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic has sent shockwaves through the American economy. Millions of Americans are filing for unemployment benefits every week. Small business owners are seeing plummeting revenue, and many of those who are still working have been forced to accept pay cuts. And now many Americans are simply unable to afford basic necessities, including housing. Based on a U.S. Census Bureau survey conducted from July 2nd to July 7th, 2020, nearly 43.4 million Americans, or about 25.3% of the adult population, either missed last month's rent or mortgage payment, or have little to no confidence they can pay next month's rent or mortgage on time. The share of adults who cannot afford to pay their monthly housing bill varies considerably from state to state. In Wisconsin, adults who cannot afford monthly housing costs, 16.1%. Hey, we're one of the lucky ones. We're 44th out of 50. The lower the number, the better you are. 16% can't afford their monthly housing costs. Renters who are housing cost burdened, 43.6%. Median household income was $60,773, and June unemployment was 8.5%. Wisconsin residents are far from more likely than most Americans to be able to afford their rent or mortgage during the COVID-19 pandemic. Housing in general is more affordable in Wisconsin than it is in much of the rest of the country. Just 43.6% of the renters in the state spend 30% or more of their income on housing. A lower housing cost burden rate that is all but 6 other states. Nationwide, 49.7% of renters are housing cost burden. A cost burden is taxes. Real estate taxes is a cost burden. In my district, we're at between 22.5 and 24.2% of the 3 municipalities that are in my district. The county portion of the real estate tax goes to. So knowing that these reports are older, we in Wisconsin, when this report came out, we didn't have the 1 million people that are still waiting for their unemployment, or maybe it's a little bit lower now, but certainly the numbers have gotten worse from what this was. We really want to screw down this budget as tight as we can. And I just hope everyone has the same idea as me. And when you're talking about people who are taking pay cuts, I know them personally. I work with them. I also know a young lady who's working at a restaurant. Both of her jobs, she had been laid off because of the virus. She was working as a waitress. Oh, guess what just happened? 25% can all go into a restaurant, and that's going to shut down too. 2 kids, husband working part-time because of his job too. So again, we need to really screw this budget down tight. We can always look at it again in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Gasky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of updates from the Planning and Development and Extended Education Committee. There are 10 resolutions and ordinances that are going to come before us tonight, but they're only dealing with 3 separate properties. We'll discuss those in more detail later in tonight's meeting. That being said, I did want to mention 2 other things. We did approve a conditional use permit for Bloom Transportation, and that's not something that needs to come before the board as a whole, but did want to make you aware of that. And then finally, our committee did unanimously approve both the University of Wisconsin Extension and the Planning and Development 2021 budgets as proposed without any amendments. And they were also passed at last night's meeting by the Public Works and Facilities Committee, also without amendments. Organizationally, there's some overlap the way the budget is generated between the 2 committees, so it has to appear before both. And that being said, I just want to thank the many dedicated county employees and their professional expertise and judgment, as well as other leaders who have worked so very hard over the past many months to produce this responsible and reasonable budget for 2021. And I look forward to moving through this process together to provide the services and help that our community needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Berg.
2 things real quick. Legislative committee, we passed our budgets today unanimously. And second, I had the opportunity to visit with Matt Collins out at the Veterans Memorial Park out in what used to be Katy. I asked anybody that has any idea or any desire to visit it to go and see what it looks like. It's wonderful with the small plains that we have there, the hills, a couple ponds, the trees, and you can have a better idea of what the setup is other than looking at the overview on the paper. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Bill.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last night in this very room, the Public Works Committee met. We approved our budget for 2021. It went some length of time. I think we adjourned probably about 11 o'clock last evening. Appreciated the supervisors. They're part of the committee. We had a full committee attendance. We also had some other supervisors that were here. part of the proceedings just to witness and to make a few comments on our budget adoption process. Next week, Wednesday, we'll have the meeting before the Finance Committee. It is a watershed moment. It's a big time for all of us here in Kenosha County when it goes before Finance. So I'd encourage you to be there if you have an interest in Public Works. I believe we're scheduled for 6:10 p.m. this coming Wednesday. Thank you.
Any other reports? Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to touch base on another issue that came before PDEC at our last meeting. Supervisor Gens brought up the issue or the concern for our youth and governance members, our students, those who are juniors, that they may possibly have an opportunity to come back and redo the program again next year, hopefully given we're not in these different times. So it's something we talked about with staff. It's not something we don't, or my consensus from the meeting was not something we do on an ongoing basis, but for the juniors that are already part of the program, give them an opportunity without jumping through the hoops, so to speak, reapplying and going through the process again. So, thank you.
I have a couple of announcements to make. I didn't get a chance to announce that Ed Kubicki last month was the $200 donation that he wanted his to go to the Fireman Care Unit. And Ed, would you care to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your generosity. It spurred me on to also donate to two other charities. I also donated to the Kenosha County Sheriff Deputy Friendly Deer Program and also the Police Officers Charities Incorporated also. Thank you again for your donation. Thank you, sir.
Okay, the other thing I have to mention is Supervisor Gashke is the next recipient, and he has chosen Women and Children's Horizons for the $200 donation. That'll be going out at the end of the month. Thank you. New business? Jeff?
I have a couple of follow-ups. Were the legislative and the public works budget passed with any amendments? Were there any amendments to either of those budgets?
What?
Through the chair to the chairs of those committee?
I can answer for Public Works. We had one proposed amendment. It failed in the committee vote, so there were no amendments to the budget in Public Works.
Thank you.
Legislative Council, there were no amendments either.
And the same thing with your committee. Thank you. I did have a question for Supervisor Rodriguez. I didn't quite understand. Did you say that it was something you guys were thinking about moving forward and letting the people that were juniors move ahead, or you just didn't like the idea?
No, it's something that the committee embraced as well as our staff. And so staff is going to go through our rules and kind of give us a red line version of how we can or may go about doing that to give those students that opportunity. And then I believe one of our students is a senior and one is a junior. The junior student did say that given the opportunity, they would come and do the program again. So I think it's something that the committee wants to do. With that, though, we might, again, early process of it, but we might expand the amount of mentors. So that's something that the committee talked about as well. So somebody like myself who was previously a mentor is not now, or somebody who would like to do it who hasn't. Next year, we would welcome that because we might grow it to possibly 2 mentors per committee. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? New business?
New business, ordinance first reading to required. Ordinance 19 from the Judiciary and Law Committee, an ordinance regarding repeal and recreation of Municipal Code of Kenosha County, Chapter 3.6451, Retention of Records, Joint Services Board. Ordinance 1 reading. Number 20, from the Planning and Development and Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding Anthony and Margaret Mariano, family limited partnership owner, Nancy Wagner agent, requests an amendment to the adopted land use plan map for Kenosha County 2035, map 54 of the comprehensive plan, from farmland protection and non-farmed wetland to farmland protection, general agricultural, and open land and non-farmed wetland, town of Wright.
Supervisor Gashke?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move resolution 20, ordinance 20, excuse me.
A motion by Supervisor Gashke, a second by Supervisor Beth. Supervisor Gashke?
Thank you. This property is located on the southwestern corner of the intersection of 18th Street and 216th Avenue. This would change the comprehensive plan from farmland protection and non-farmed wetland to farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, and non-farmed wetland. The town of Brighton did recommend this and approved it, and it also was approved by our committee. I'd ask for your support.
Any discussion? Not all those in favor, aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Terry?
yes, question. So as a practical matter, what's going to happen on this land after these amendments are made here? I mean, I see there's a whole series of them, involving this partnership and these amendments to the land use plan. So what's going to develop there that is necessary for this change?
Supervisor Beth is more familiar with this particular development, and if it's all right with the chair, I'll allow her to speak. I'd ask her to speak on behalf of the development plan here.
This home site with barns and a small pasture was owned by an individual, and he passed away in May or June. The land went to his niece, Mrs. Marino. And the people that rent the pasture and the barn have horses there. In order for them to maintain a larger pasture and keep their animals and renovate the house, they enlarged the piece of property. So she will keep part of the farmland in the family, and the people that are buying the house and the barn will have more access for their animals and to renovate the barn and house, and it will be more of a historical site after the renovations because it is a very old farmhouse and barn.
That answer your question, Terry?
It does.
Again, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried, thank you.
From the Planning and Development and Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding Anthony and Margaret Marino Family Limited Partnership owner, Nancy Wagner agent, requests a rezoning from A1 Agricultural Preservation District and C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District to A1 Agricultural Preservation District, A2 General Agricultural District, C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District, Town of Brighton. Supervisors Gashke, aye. Mauer, excuse. Beth, aye. Nudo, excused. Rodriguez, aye.
Supervisor Gasky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move ordinance 21.
Motion by Supervisor Gasky, second by Supervisor Rodriguez. Supervisor Gasky?
Thank you. This is the same property we just talked about and that Supervisor Beth helped give more insight on. Again, this particular ordinance would allow a division of the residential and the farm buildings onto a 15-acre parcel, and then there would remain a 65-acre parcel to farm. The town of Brighton recommended approval of the request and it passed our committee. We ask for your support tonight.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried, thank you.
Ordinance 22, from the Planning and Development and Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding the request of HCP2 LLC owner, Jeff Badke agent, 0100, requesting an amendment to the adopted land use plan map for Kenosha County 2035, map 65 of the comprehensive plan, from farmland protection and SEC to farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, and SEC Town of Brighton. Supervisor Gashke, aye. Mauer, excused. Beth, aye. Nudo, excused. Rodriguez, aye.
Supervisor Gasky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move ordinance 22.
Moved by Supervisor Gasky, second by Supervisor Beth. Supervisor Gasky?
All right, so this is a different property. The Bad Key property is located about 1,300 feet from the southeast corner of the intersection of County Trunk Highways B and NN. This comprehensive plan amendment would allow for the county comprehensive plan to change from farmland protection and SEC to general agricultural and open land and secondary environmental corridor. There are going to be further ordinances coming up tonight on the same property. The town of Brighton did recommend approval of this request. It also passed our committee.
Terry Rolls.
I'd like the board to be informed about what's going to be developed here if this series of ordinance passes. It's the practical effect.
Yep, so it's my understanding that the Badke family is planning to sell some of this property once it's rezoned for further development, as well as maintain some of it for additional farming and things along those lines. Again, Supervisor Beth was able to attend some of the meetings in the town of Brighton, and I would invite her insight if she has any additional discussion.
Jeff Badke is going to develop 3 building sites on these 2 very large parcels of land. They are different sizes. 2 will be 10 acres, 2 or 3, 1 will be 5. There are 3 building sites on 60th Street west of 75. And then there will be 1 on NN, and I'm not certain what the other side road is west of there. And the unusual size on the 2 that are closest to NN involves 2 different school districts. So he had to change several parcels. Part of 1 is 6 acres, and they all have road frontage, and the town of Brighton has approved all 5 sites for development. All have road access, and all have been approved for driveways. That's about it.
Okay.
And a great portion returns to agricultural.
That answer your question, Terry?
Yes.
Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you. I just want to add, Supervisor Beth did a great job with that. Part of this, like in committee, this was very confusing. I know for myself, I think for the rest of us, because of how Supervisor Beth mentioned, there's 2 different school districts involved. One of these parcels is measured really in feet. Like we're talking, like it's very tiny. So I don't want there to be any confusion. If you look further on the agenda, there's another comp plan. It's all one big chunk of land, but the school district's really threw a wrench in it. So that's, I just wanted to add that, so there's no confusion later on when we hit the second comp plan.
Thank you. Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at these parcels, I believe there's something wrong unless there's a 3.59 acre parcel coming out of this that's going from zoning from A2 to A1. But that can't be. It's got to be an R1. Is that just a typo? If you look at the, yes, I do. Sure. Because even that 6.41 acre parcel is A2 to R1. Here it's showing A2 to A1. That would not be possible because it's under 10 acres. A1 would be over 10 acres. A2 would be 10 acres.
Right. This is the parcel that's going to be the building site. This
Okay.
parcel is going back to agriculture.
Well, where's it being attached to? It can't go to
This here.
agriculture. Okay, so this is being added to the
Attached
A1.
to that.
Got it. Thank you.
And that's his property too.
Okay, no, that's fine. I was just wondering how that could be. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any nays? Carried, thank you.
Ordinance 23 from Planning, Development, Extension, Education Committee, an ordinance regarding the request of HCP2 LLC owner, Jeff Badke agent, 0100, requesting a rezoning from A1 Agricultural Preservation District and C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District to A1 Agricultural Preservation District A2 General Agricultural District, and C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District, Town of Brighton. Supervisor Gashke, aye. Mauer excused. Beth, aye. Nudo excused. Rodriguez, aye.
Supervisor Gasky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move ordinance 23.
By Supervisor Gasky, second by Supervisor Rodriguez. Supervisor Gasky.
Thank you. Again, this is the same property we were just discussing. This particular ordinance would allow two different lots, a 5-acre and a 10-acre lot, and the remaining approximately 60 acres would be available for farming. The town of Brighton recommended the approval of this request. It passed our committee, and we ask for your approval as well.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Carried, thank you.
Ordinance 24 from the Planning and Development and Extension Education Committee. An ordinance regarding HCP2 LLC owner Jeff Badke, agent 0301, requests an amendment to the adopted land use plan map for the Kenosha County 2035, map 65 of the comprehensive plan, from farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, and SEC to farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, rural density residential, and SEC, Town of Brighton. Supervisor Gashke, aye. Mauer excused. Beth, aye. Nudo excused. Rodriguez, aye.
Supervisor Gasky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move ordinance 24.
Moved by Supervisor Gasky, second by Supervisor Beth. Supervisor Gasky.
Same property that we've just been discussing. This is a comprehensive plan amendment. And what it would do is allow the county to make a change, as the clerk's office just read, farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, and SEC to farmland protection, general agricultural and open, rural density residential, and SEC. Again, this is all part of a larger division for future development, as well as preserving agricultural. The town of Brighton recommended approval of this request, passed our committee, and we ask for your support.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any nays? Carried, thank you.
Ordinance 25 from the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee. An ordinance regarding HCP2 LLC owner Jeff Badke, agent 0301, requests a rezoning from A1 Agricultural Preservation District, A2 General Agricultural District, C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District, to A1 Agricultural Preservation District, A2 General Agricultural District, R1 Rural Residential District, C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District, and C1 Lowland Resource Conservancy District. Supervisor Gashke, aye. Mauer excused. Beth, aye. Nudo excused. Rodriguez, aye.
Supervisor Gasky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move ordinance 25.
Supervisor Gasky moved. Supervisor Rodriguez, second. Supervisor Gasky.
Same property, located near the intersection of County Trunk Highway B and County Trunk Highway NN. This is a rezoning that would allow 3 5-acre lots to be produced, and then there would be about 52 acres additionally remaining for farming. Again, the town of Brighton approved, our committee approved, and we ask for your approval.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any nays? Carried, thank you.
Ordinance 26 from the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee. An ordinance regarding Maxon requests a rezoning from A1 Agricultural Preservation District and R2 Suburban Single Family Residential District to R2 Suburban Density Residential District, Town of Paris. Supervisor Gashke, aye. Mauer excused. Beth, aye. Nudo excused. Rodriguez, aye.
Supervisor Gasky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move ordinance 26.
Moved by Supervisor Gasky, second by Supervisor Beth. Supervisor Gasky.
Now, this is a different property than we've been discussing. The Maxon property is located approximately 1,100 feet from 136th Avenue and 12th Street. And what this ordinance does is it would be rezoning from A1 Agricultural Preservation District to R2 Suburban Single Family Residential District. Again, to allow for future developments and upgrades. The town of Paris does recommend the approval of this request, past our committee, and we ask for your approval as well.
Discussion?
I just want to clarify that this rezone won't add future development necessarily. This is Mr. Maxim acquired land behind his home, that's farmland, that he's just gonna expand his backyard, make his backyard bigger. That's all.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Carried, thank you.
Resolution one reading, number 42 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution FY 2020 Law Enforcement Justice Assistance Grant, JAG Award AEDs. From Judiciary and Law Enforcement, Supervisor Boyd Frederick, I. Celebrity, I. Wamble, I. Belsky, I. Nordigan, I. Palmaville, I. Gully, I. From Finance and Administration, Supervisor Rose, I. Gantz, I. Ron Frederick, I. Wamble, I. Kubicki, I. Uhas, I. Franco, I.
Supervisor Frederick,
Yes, move resolution 42.
moved by Supervisor Frederick, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Frederick,
This is a U.S. Department Justice Assistant Grant, which is split between the city and the county, where the county's portion is $13,024. The grant begins on October 1st, 2019, and it's for purchasing of automatic electronic defibrillators. There is no additional funds from this grant.
any discussion? Seeing none, there's a roll call vote.
Supervisor Winky and Supervisor Winky. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Carried.
Resolution 43 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of Joshua Barker to serve on the Kenosha Joint Services Board. Supervisor Boyd Frederick, I. Celebrity, I. Wamble, I. Belsky, I. Nordigan, I. Palmaville, I. Gully, I.
Supervisor Frederick,
Move resolution 43.
moved by Supervisor Frederick, second by Supervisor Palmaville. Supervisor Frederick,
Yes, we had a great discussion with Joshua Barker. We believe the committee thought he was a good choice, and he's very excited to take the position that on the Joint Services Board.
any discussion?
Supervisor
Jeff.
Getz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a nice business lunch with Josh and we talked for about an hour. And what I look for in an independent member on the Joint Services Board is someone who's not going to play city or county, but looks at what's best for our constituents and what's best for joint services. And I was very, very happy with his responses in our discussion. So I just wanted to let everybody know that. Thank you.
Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions. This one, I guess, is clerical of a sort. Looks like the city council took this up in mid-August. Why did it take so long for it to get to us? I don't know if there was a lack of agenda items or is this usual?
One meeting was canceled due to lack of agenda items.
Okay.
And that's why it took the extra month.
All right, and then through the chair, to whoever can answer this, just looking at his resume here and his application, I don't know if the chair wants to answer this or if Supervisor Gens wants to answer this. I'm just curious what he brings to the Joint Services Board, not being a member of emergency personnel, no history of that, or something similar of the sort.
We have citizen members of
Who
the
wants to
board.
tackle that? White Frederick or Jeff Gens?
We have citizen members on the board from all different facets and walks of life. We've had union members, business leaders. As the independent member, we want somebody who's going to be impartial and, like I said, take the interest of joint services and our constituents first and foremost. But to dive into your question in more depth, what he brings is his job is to work work with children who, are at risk at Indian trails and throughout the community. And I certainly think that's a facet that can, be tied into joint services and some of the responses that they go through. But I felt that he was very, you don't need to be qualified per se, but I thought he was very qualified, and he had a very burning interest. I brought him the budget and other documents from joint services, and he was very eager to be brought up to speed. And so I like his attitude, and I think he'll be a good member of the board. Thank you.
And then was there anything Supervisor Gentz that stood out? Something that he wanted to take on or something that he was passionate about regarding this? I know you said like you liked his answers to things. Just looking for a little more depth to that.
Well, I didn't interrogate him, but I did like what he did in going to the various households and working with the kids and the families. And I think he'll have a great deal of compassion and business acumen for what joint services does. So we don't have a checklist of what would qualify you or not. I mean, I just look for somebody who's going to look at the facts and make good decisions for the community. And I thought he really would. So beyond that, I don't think I can answer anything else. Thank you.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Burke.
Just looking at Mr. Barker's affiliations in terms of being part of the African American Youth Initiative, the Kenosha County Gang Task Force, and the KUSD Community Crisis Mobilization Team, I think he brings a great asset to joint services, which is going to be very keen in making possible changes in the future. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's take a vote. Roll call.
Supervisor Nudo. Okay, passes.
Passes. Thank you.
Resolution 44 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee, resolution for a probationary cabaret license, Wilmot Mountain VRWM Holdings, LLC, agent Brandon Schwartz. Supervisor Boyd Frederick, I. Celebrity, I. Wamble, I. Nordigan, I. Belsky, I. Palmaville, I. Gully, I.
Supervisor Frederick.
Move resolution 44.
Moved by Supervisor Frederick, second by Supervisor Wamble. Supervisor Frederick.
Yes, there was a brand new agent that's named Brandon Schwartz. That's why they're doing this now. And everything with the inspection went perfectly well. I see no reason why this shouldn't be passed.
Any discussion? Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As being the Wilma Mountain being in my district, there's also an institution in Lake, McHenry counties, and as well as Kenosha County, Walworth County, Racine County. They've been good neighbors. With the new agent, we'll find out what's going on that way, but I encourage everyone to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any nays? Carried. Thank you.
Resolution 45 from the Planning, Development, Extension, Education Committee, a resolution regarding Anthony and Margaret Marino Family Limited Partnership owner, Nancy Wagner agent, requests an amendment to the adopted land use plan map for Kenosha County 2035, map 54 of the comprehensive plan, from farmland protection and non-farmed wetland to farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, and non-farmed wetland, town of Brighton. Supervisor Gashke, I. Mauer excused. Beth, I. Nudo excused. Rodriguez, I.
Supervisor Gashke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move resolution 45.
Resolution moved by Supervisor Gashke, second by Supervisor Beth. Supervisor Gashke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the same property we discussed earlier with ordinances 20 and 21. And the reason this resolution is before us tonight is because of the changes, desired changes here, the state requires a resolution, both from our committee and an ordinance from the full county board to amend the comprehensive plan. Again, the town of Brighton did recommend approval. our committee approved, and we ask for yours tonight.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you, carried.
From the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee, a resolution regarding the request of HCP2 LLC owner Jeff Badke, agent, 0100, requesting an amendment to the adopted land use plan map for Kenosha County, 2035, map 65 of the comprehensive plan, from farmland protection and SEC to farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, and SEC, Town of Brighton. Supervisor Gashke, aye. Mauer, excuse. Beth, aye. Nudo, excuse. Rodriguez, aye.
Supervisor Gashke,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move resolution 46.
moved by Supervisor Gashke, second by Supervisor Rodriguez. Supervisor Gashke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is the same property we've discussed at length earlier this evening at the corner of County Trunk Highways B and NN. Again, the reason this resolution is before us is because the state of Wisconsin requires a resolution, both from our committee and from our board, to make this kind of an amendment to the comprehensive plan. The town of Brighton does recommend approval, as well as our committee, and we ask for your support.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any nays? Carried, thank you.
A resolution regarding HCP2 LLC owner Jeff Badke, agent, 0301, requests an amendment to the adopted land use plan map for Kenosha County, 2035, map 65 of the comprehensive plan, from farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, and SEC to farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, rural density residential, and SEC, Town of Brighton. Supervisor Gashke, aye. Mauer, excuse. Beth, aye. Nudo, excused. Rodriguez, aye.
Supervisor Gashke,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move resolution 47.
moved by Supervisor Gashke, second by Supervisor Beth. Supervisor Gashke.
Same property we just talked about. As Supervisor Rodriguez mentioned earlier, this particular property was slightly more complicated because of two different school districts. Again, the reason that this resolution is before us tonight is the state requires a resolution from our committee and our board, and the town of Brighton recommends approval. Our committee does, and we ask for your support.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any nays? Carried, thank you.
Resolution 48 from the Public Works and Facilities and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution to approve an intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Twin Lakes and the Town of Randall regarding County Highway F. From Public Works and Facilities, Supervisor Grady, aye. Franco, aye. Belsky, aye. Berg, aye. Nudo, excused. Palmaville, aye. Rodriguez, aye. From Finance and Administration, Supervisor Rose, aye. Gantz, aye. Ron Frederick, aye. Kubicki, aye. Franco, aye. Uhas, aye. Wamble, aye.
Supervisor Grady,
Move resolution 48.
moved by Supervisor Grady, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For those of you who live on the west end of Kenosha, out in the county, or visited County F, it's been quite a project undertaking this particular construction season. It involves the area around the Triangle Bar. Not a good traffic design. The road that is being constructed will be much superior in terms of its capability. It'll also probably have will have a tie-in to the back edge of the Veterans Park for access as well. So it's kind of a multi-phase thing. When these projects come forward, we have agreements with the municipalities. In this particular situation, we have both Twin Lakes and Randall. And we have to have documentation that has jurisdictional transfer of land, maintenance agreements, and so forth. So this is relatively common. There's nothing exceptional in this particular one, except it's happening this construction season, and it's about 2/3 of the way along in terms of its completion. So I ask your approval this evening. If you have more in-depth questions, we do have administration here that can respond to them. Thank you.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Carried, thank you.
Resolution 49 from the Public Works and Facilities and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution to approve an intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Pleasant Prairie regarding Kroger development. From Public Works, Supervisor Grady, I. Franco, I. Belsky, I. Berg, I. Nudo, nay. Palmaville, I. Rodriguez, I. From Finance and Administration, Supervisor Rose, I. Gantz, I. Ron Frederick, I. Vicky, I. Franco, I. Uhas, I. Wamble, I.
Supervisor Grady.
Thank you. Move resolution number 49.
Motion is moved by Supervisor Grady, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you. This particular development, like many of them, we have the actual responsible party, which is Kroger in this case, pay for costs associated with development. The way this was originally structured is Kroger was to pay the county was to act as a conduit and disperse the funds to those that were doing the work on the project. Now, in this particular situation, a little twist occurred. And instead of Kroger paying the county for one particular part of the development project, the developer was paid directly by Kroger. And it's just a little bit of an oddity. It wasn't really planned that way. But there was a little bit of consternation at Finance Committee as to, was this irregular? Was this proper? Did it materially affect the agreement between us as an entity, Kroger, and the work getting done? And after reviewing it, we had this as an agenda item last night for Public Works, reviewed it thoroughly, found that it does not materially affect the agreement that was in place. It was appropriate, and so therefore I ask for your approval this evening.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Carried. One nay.
Not a two-thirds vote. So what?
Is it?
Is it roll call?
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah. Yeah. Roll call vote.
Supervisor O'Day?
Okay.
And communications. Number 7, communications from Andy M. Bueller regarding future items scheduled before the Planning, Development, Extension, Education Committee.
Receive and file.
Claims. Number 16, 60th Street Investments, LLC, and Vincent I. Ruffalo, condemnation review.
For the Corporation Council.
Approval of the October 6, 2020 minutes by Supervisor Ron Frederick.
Supervisor. Moving seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Here. Moving seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Carried. Thank you.